For more than 2 decades, we've been educating our listeners about financial topics that are most important to you. Do you have enough money to retire? How will you keep from running out of money? What's your plan for managing market risk? What about taxes, inflation, and healthcare? Each week, we talk with an advisor at Lucia Capital Group about these issues and more. This is Managing Your Financial Future.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, welcome back to the podcast. Johnny Dean, your podcast host, of course, and Rick Plum, Rick the Professor Plum, certified financial planner professional, accredited wealth management advisor, here with me. Been doing a lot of reading yesterday, this past couple of days. Have you ever noticed, Rick Plum, how everybody's always looking for a shortcut?
Really? It doesn't matter what we're talking specifically about finance, but it's on everything. What's the quickest way to lose weight? What's the quickest way to make $1 million? What's the quickest way? Name your desire. I want to. I want to do it now, and I want it to be now.
It's everywhere. Now, you mentioned lose weight. The diet industry, I did a little checking. That was the first one that I noticed doing this many years ago. They would come on. I mean, you would see the diet pills. Yeah, they would come on. They say, you too can lose 19 pounds a day eating cheeseburgers and ice cream sundaes. All you have to do is send us a huge pile of money, and we'll tell you how our system works. Then they say, the system may not actually work.
But when coupled with good nutrition and exercise, it's like, of course.
Well, see, and there's the price. See, and that's the thing. Doesn't matter. Losing weight, building a business, or, as we're going to talk about today, getting yourself to and through retirement, there's always somebody out there that says there's a better way, there's a faster way, there's a trick, a hack, or whatever it is to get the results that you want via some kind of shortcut. And actually, Rick, it's gotten worse because a lot of this, obviously we live in a world where everything is instant, right? You want instant information. You want your TV shows on right now. You get upset when you can't call somebody, even if they're out in the jungle somewhere, So naturally, I think people start to expect the same thing when it comes to their own finances. They want, faster results, less effort. But, of course, that doesn't work in the real world, especially when it comes to money. Now, there are things you can do that make a difference, though, things that could potentially put you in a better position financially. But
eat healthy, exercise. Are these things that you're going to talk to me about fun things? I don't want to eat healthy. I don't want to exercise. I just want to lose weight. So show me how to do this in a fun, exciting way, and you'll have me. You'll grab me. I'll be your best friend for life.
Well, not only that, people who say that same thing that you just said are willing to send money to people who say there's a shortcut. But there's always a trade-off, and we're going to talk about these things today. Now, what we're going to tell you about today, they're not really shortcuts. They might look like shortcuts, but they're more like I'll call them hacks, for lack of a better word. Things that can, I think, apply to everyone, but they have a cost, a price. I don't necessarily mean money-wise, like a price tag, but there's a cost you have to pay. I've got 3, okay? Now, there may be more, but for our purposes, I think I've boiled the whole thing down to 3 simple, but I think potentially effective ideas. Certainly, these are ideas that apply, I would say, across the board, which is, Rick, that's a bold statement to make for someone who has such disdain for generic rules.
I'm going to be interested to see what you've got coming my way here, and whether or not I even agree with you, because we have not gone over this ahead of time.
We have not. This is all a surprise to you. Now, I know you and I, we do not like reducing complex topics down to just one sentence, but we're going to do just that today. So,
I mean, unfortunately, in financial planning, in tax, in investing, it isn't the same for everybody, and there is no one size fits all. And yet you're telling me that you're going to come up with some.
Well, you tell me. I mean, you might say it's ridiculous. I don't think you will, though. So let's get to these.
I say that off the air.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, certainly not to me. So 3 hacks. There are 5 hacks if you count Rick Plum and me. There you go. No. All right. Okay, so here they are. For the first one, here's the first personal finance hack. Do not sell volatile assets to fund your immediate cash flow needs. Now, look.
Yeah. Okay. Never put yourself in a position where you have to sell volatile assets to fund short-term needs.
Yes. If there is a mantra to this podcast, I think that is it. Rick, now you said don't put yourself in a position. I understand there are certain times where things come up unexpected, and maybe you have to do that. But on an ongoing basis, over time, you don't want to do it. Talk about that again for a moment. Why I think you would agree with this particular hack, and how everybody. I can't think of anybody who couldn't benefit from that.
Well, that's where the importance of an emergency fund of some form. And as I said, emergency funds can evolve and can be different for different people. I mentioned that when I was younger, to me, the emergency fund was a paid-off credit card that I could tap back into. Now it's cash in the bank because I can afford to have cash in the bank. Back then, I couldn't afford to have cash just sitting around earning, nothing. Now a little bit different part of life. So having some access to capital that is not losing money at the time. Murphy's Law says the expense that you're going to need, that emergency expense, is going to happen, about March of 2009 or maybe October of 2002, when your stock portfolio has gone down by more than 50%. And if you're using that to fund your short-term needs, that's where a credit card, even though it may have some interest, that may be better because it may give yourself some time to free up some cash flow to do things and not have to sell something when it's down. Because, if you have $10,000 in the stock market as your emergency fund, and then 6 months goes by and the emergency happens, and the emergency is only $5,000, but your stock is now $5,000. It's basically you're spending what was $10,000 to pay for that $5,000 need. Mm-hmm. That is the buy low or buy high, sell low problem that a lot of people have. We don't want to get into that situation. Unfortunately, our emotions tend to push us there because we're greedy and we're fearful and we do things at the wrong time for the wrong reason. We do not want to get into a buy high, sell low situation ever, whether it's because we have to spend the money or because we're afraid that we're going to lose the money that we've already lost. Never put yourself in that position.
Yeah, if you can help
I used the word never.
You did use the word. Well, you see here. Look, this is why I said these are rules that apply to everybody. Yeah. And I know we don't like to say always and never, but there are certain instances where it makes sense. Now, what you're talking about, Rick, is you need to separate the money you need now from the money that you won't need for quite some time. Give that money time to potentially grow so you're never forced to sell when markets are down. And that's how you prevent temporary volatility from turning into a permanent loss, which is something I think you've said quite a bit over the last several podcasts.
We don't want to do that. Permanent loss is not a good thing unless it's weight.
Well, even that isn't always permanent for some people. So that's
tell me about it.
Yeah, so that's the idea. Do not sell volatile assets to fund your immediate cash flow needs. Now, I mentioned for each one of these hacks or whatever that we're gonna talk about the price that you pay. There is a cost to this doing this, and my idea would be that the price of doing this is you've got to keep a portion of your money in safer, less maybe non-volatile, lower return assets, and accept that not every single dollar is going to be working at full growth potential at all times for you.
Right. And even back in the day when I was not holding a lot of money in cash or any for that particular issue, and I was using a paid off credit card, having a paid off zero balance credit card meant that I was not spending money. I wasn't buying things that I wanted right away because I needed to keep that available for emergencies. That meant that I couldn't just go out and spend money and buy things that I would otherwise want to have and enjoy while hey, I've got room on my credit card. I can go buy that XYZ, whatever it is. So yeah, I was giving up current lifestyle, supposedly, to be able to have that ability to live through a bad time.
Yeah, and now, then of course that was years ago, as you said, but now you still accept that not 100% of your money. I mean, if the markets went up 50% over the next 2 years, I could
have made a whole lot more money by putting what I have in cash into the market.
Right.
But on the other hand, having cash on the sidelines when the markets go down. Now, the markets have been down over the last several years at different times, 20% or more at different points. And when it gets down 15, 20%, I do have a little issue with keeping money in cash. When the market's down 20, and I haven't reached it yet, but there's going to be a point where it goes down far enough that I'm actually going to take the money out of cash and buy in. But I haven't done it yet. I say I will. I just haven't done it because I guess I haven't felt that it's gone down far enough. It's gone down pretty well at times.
One of the criticisms that we've heard over the years, especially, I remember in the late 90s, of the bucket strategy is that, well, what do you mean you don't have 100% of your money in the QQQs, or what do you mean you don't? Why is it not invested? What's wrong with you? And we would hear that. We would hear that in the late 90s, I remember. We would hear that. What are some other boom times? And we haven't had anything quite like that.
The late 90s, we were basically criticized for being way too conservative. And back in the late 90s, we could get some decent interest rates on cash and fixed guaranteed accounts. And in what we would call bucket number one, we weren't getting 2, 3, 4%. We were getting 5, 6, 7% and maybe a little more on some of the guaranteed things that we were dealing with. And people were like, why would I accept a 7% guarantee when the market, the triple Q or pick your poison in the market, safely gives you 20% a year? And that is a direct quote from somebody we knew. We're like,
I know who we're talking about. Yes,
safely 20%. Those two words should not be used in the same sentence without a big, sarcasm listing on it.
Well, you see, they didn't. What they weren't looking at, they didn't see that as a cost. They saw that as a lost opportunity, and the cost, even back then, was that you're giving up something. But what happened in 2000
that killed it. We went from being way too conservative to geniuses overnight because we had dry powder. We had money on the side. We had safe money that didn't lose any value that we could live on, or we could then turn into an investment opportunity. We could buy in when the market's down 48%. What a recovery time,
Well, who knows? And if nothing else, if you were retired, your cash flow was okay. So, all right, so that's the first one. Do not sell volatile assets to fund your immediate cash flow needs. I think that's something that Rick would say that everybody should follow. And there's that word "everybody" again. All right, let's get to the second hack, is what we're calling these. That would be use time to your advantage. Now, the idea behind this is really you want to give compounding the decades that it requires. Compounding only works if you give it enough time. We've said this many times on this show. The real edge is not trying to find the best investment, but it's staying invested long enough for the math to work in your favor. Rick, I know you agree with that as well.
You are correct. The math behind compounding. Compounding is a very powerful force. But the more time you allow compounding, the better the potential outcome, because the difference between a 5 and a 10% rate of return over 1 year, it's a number. But it's not, it's also accepting some risk, because to get a 10% rate of return, I have to accept volatility where I could get a 0 or less than % rate of return, whereas the 4%, call it Treasury right now, CDs is guaranteed. Okay, yeah, I can have more money if the market does well, but over 1 year. But if I can get an average of 10 over the next 10 or 15 years, the return differential from the safe side of things is very large. And so giving myself time gives us a more a better realistic approach to what an average is going to be, more like a 8, 9, 10% average. Whereas on a 1 year holding, it may be positive 30, minus 25. When we get out to the 15, 20 year time horizons, we're more likely, a range of 9 to 11. So investing in the long term gives us that ability compared to, I see people that, I meet with them and they've got their money, cash, their emergency fund. Yes, they have their emergency fund. Good for them. Sitting in a bank savings account at 0.05%. I was talking to some younger people just the other day. I mean, younger to me. They're in their 40s.
Yeah, that changes as yeah.
But they've got a couple $100,000 in cash, and that they want, and they've got it sitting. I think they earned maybe $150 in interest last year in the bank savings account. They could have done the same thing with FDIC, with the same, everything basically the same, and earned $7,000 to $8,000. And I was teasing them. I said, I understand rich people like you don't think $7,000 or $8,000 is very important. And of course, they said, wait a minute, Rick. But for taking no additional risk and getting so we're always trying to get that better return. Yes, we want that, but that's short-term money. It has been earmarked for short-term money, but that doesn't mean to accept zero rate of return on it. We want to do the best we can with everything we have, but we have to identify the need. But compounding over a period of years, okay, compound just that. I'm getting $7,000 a year of interest versus $200 a year of interest. Yeah, that's a big number in 1 year. But go out 10 years, $70,000 worth of more than that because it'd be compounding versus $1,000 of interest, $1,200 of interest. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's of course not the simple kind of compounding. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, did somebody say, was it, who was it that Einstein? Somebody said that the
most powerful force in the world or something of that nature?
Yeah, it was compounding.
Yep.
I forget the quote. It's a good quote, but that's exactly what it is. And I was reading, I saw a great quote the other day on this, and it went like this: an underappreciated truth in finance, especially investing, is that you don't need to make many great decisions to do well over time. You just have to consistently not blow it for long periods of time.
Well, Einstein was credited, I don't say that he actually did it, but he's credited with the quote, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it."
Oh, really? That's the quote?
That's the one that they're crediting to him.
Okay. All right. Well, see, and this all goes back, but this all goes back to the idea of time. You cannot do a shortcut. We said this a couple episodes back where nature hates a cheat code. You can't, you can't grow a tree. You can't grow a strong tree in 2 years, from a twig. I read another thing about this where there was a certain type of tree. I brought this up. And it grows really, really quickly in compared to other trees. But the wood is very brittle.
The root system is really bad.
Right, exactly. But you take a better tree like, I don't know, an oak or an elm or something like that takes a lot longer to grow. Yeah, it takes, but look how strong it is after 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, something like that. So obviously I'm using up my comparisons here. But the idea is, the metaphors, the idea is to use time to your advantage, and you can do that while you're building your savings. This is not just for retired people. I mean, use time. You're 22, 23 years old, Rick. I mean,
I am? Oh, thank you.
You've got time. You just brought up, it was a younger couple, you said, with that that money
in cash.
Right. Now, I mean, if this is money they don't need for 30 years, and I know there are people in their 20s who they got 40 years in some cases, presumably. Use that to your advantage. And that's something that I think everybody can at least look at.
And even if you might need it, get the best return you can for the type of asset you have. Mm-hmm. Don't just settle for the bank. Oh, my God. Don't do that. it just hurts. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, okay. But that's all right. But that's the idea. All right. So those are the first two. First one, don't sell volatile assets to fund your immediate cash flow needs. The second hack was use time to your advantage. And the third hack that I think everybody could benefit from is pay as little in taxes as you are legally required to do. There was a phrase it used to go something like, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep.
Right.
And I think it had to do with taxes. Yeah. So, Rick,
I'd say be as efficient because you can very easily pay less in taxes by earning less. So if all you're saying is pay as little in taxes as you can, that just means earn less. Well, I don't want to earn less. Be as efficient with your overhead, and I'll call it taxes overhead. Be as efficient with the expense as you possibly can. And this, I talked to people. We just got done with tax season a little while ago, and people were talking about withholding, and they look at their return, and I'd say, "Well, you paid a penalty last year because you didn't withhold enough." And they're like, "Well, it was only $150, or it wasn't a big number." And I was like, "Yeah, but do you really like giving Congress or the state that you live in the tax that you're paying, let alone more? Why don't you just write them an extra check?" And they're like, "Well, I'm not going to write them another check." Well, then get this straight and don't pay them any more money than you absolutely need to pay them. And that's, I think, what you need to do is, figure out how to be as efficient as possible with those overhead expenses that we don't get any direct value from.
Well, that's kind of where I was going. What I mean, you said you could earn less, but that still doesn't mean you could earn less, but you're still legally required to pay a certain amount on that lesser amount of money. If you want to go out and earn less, that's fine because you don't want to pay as much as you paid last year. That's okay, but you still don't want to overpay. It doesn't matter how much you
less. I want to earn more and pay less.
Well, there are ways to do that. So now here's something on this idea. There is a price to following this particular hack. And it may not seem obvious, but you've talked about it before, Rick. Sometimes, well, first of all, you got to plan ahead, but sometimes you got to make tax moves that don't feel great in the short term.
Well,
but
unfortunately, taxes are a sign of success. And we're always looking for a way to not pay them. But the reality is, especially when it comes to investing, capital gains taxes and things like that, there's only two basic ways to avoid, to have a huge gain and to avoid that tax. And one is to lose the gain. Hey, you lose the tax there too, or die. And neither one of those are good planning opportunities. We try to avoid both of those where we can. Yeah. But, it's a matter of how do we do this as efficiently as possible. But what you're talking about also is at some point, the risk of owning an asset that has a gain in it outweighs the tax that you're going to pay. And a lot of times we do always look, if possible, at can we at least hold out for a year before we sell this so that we go from a short-term capital gain to a long-term capital gain. But there's times where when you're looking at the investment that's gone up really nicely in the last X number of weeks, and you're saying, you know what, I think that selling now, there's just something on the horizon that says this is overblown. It's grown too fast. I'd rather lock in my gains today, even though it might be short-term gain, than pay a long-term gain on a significantly lesser amount later on. Mm-hmm. So, and I call it, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. And we see this a lot for people getting ready to retire, specifically who have personal money, obviously not IRA money because it doesn't count there, where they've got 100% money in stock. They've done very well. They've been building their portfolio for 30 years, and now they're getting ready to retire, but 100% of their money's in stock. And they really need, they're way out of whack from a risk-return relationship. They need some money in what we call bucket number one. They need some money in safer areas. They are way too aggressive because now they're just giving the market all the control over whether they retire in 6 months to a year. Because if the market goes down, they've got enough money to retire today. But if the market drops by 20%, they are going to be a little tight. So don't let the market do that. And you're going to pay the tax. Well, let's get you in the right situation today. Even though it does cost some taxes, it's a better place to be. And hey, if taxes are the worst thing in the world, you're doing okay. Because not having any taxes in many cases means not having any income is in many cases worse than having to pay some tax on huge gains.
You've talked in the past many times about using up the bracket where you can.
You're spending the brackets. But even at that point, sometimes your risk situation demands that you incur the tax a day because you are just way out of whack from a risk standpoint. Based on your goals, you're way out of whack on a risk standpoint.
Yeah, and now some people might look at that and say, well, that it may or may not happen. It's speculative. We don't really know what's going to happen with that stock. You could make a wrong bet. But that's certainly a strategy that could potentially pay off. Now, the other one that I'm talking about when we talk about spending the bracket, Rick, you've said many times, maybe we take some money out of the IRA now before we're required to at age, maybe we're 65, 66.
Well,
talk about that.
I see this a lot, especially with beneficiary IRAs. Somebody inherited an IRA from somebody more than 10 years older than them, not a spouse. And so they've got the 10-year clock. And either the person that died was under full retirement age, and I don't have a required minimum distribution in years 1 through 9 after their death, But that doesn't mean I might not want to take some money out. I mean, let's say I inherit $250,000. Nice number. Wouldn't that be nice? But it's not going to happen. So if I leave it alone for the 10-year period of time, and it earns 10%, that $250,000 could be worth $800,000 10 years from now, assuming about a 10% rate of return. And now I have to take all of it out in one lump sum before December 31st of the 10th year. $800,000. That tax is going to be ugly, to say the least. Now, so I may, instead of wanting to leave it alone and grow it as much as possible, traditional IRA, I may want to take $25,000, $30,000 a year out so that the 10th year distribution is still only about $200,000, $250,000 or some number. And that's where spending the bracket comes in. How much can I take out without adversely affecting the tax bracket I'm going to pay in the end? I know that if I leave it alone, $800,000 in this example is going to jump me a bracket unless I'm already in the highest bracket. And most people just aren't in the highest bracket. So maybe taking some money out now, lessening the future pain, take a little bit of pain today to avoid a lot of pain later makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where we can see it the most.
And certainly there's a cost to that. And actually there's a cost. I mean, that is the cost. And that's a financial, that's an actual, money kind of cost. The price is you pay some taxes now to potentially avoid them for the rest of your life later on.
To eventually avoid more taxes later on. And it doesn't mean a required minimum distribution doesn't mean you have to spend the money. It just means you have to pay the tax. Mm-hmm. So I could still take the money out, pay some taxes on it, and invest it for the future, and still have I may only have $700,000 10 years from now instead of $800,000 in the IRA, but a big chunk of that $700,000 is now long-term capital gain, a higher basis, not all taxable, compared to all $800,000 being taxable in my example. Mm-hmm. So I'll end up with more money even after paying the taxes on that personal account once I get it out there, than I will on a lump sum of $800,000, even though the lump sum is a larger to start with, less after the taxes. It's not what you have, it's what you keep. Going back to something you said earlier. It's a matter of what I get to keep in my pocket. And I've seen this where people want municipal bonds in their portfolio because they're tax-free. Mm-hmm. But the difference between the taxable rate of return and the municipal bond interest rate of return on the same maturity type thing, same risk quality bonds, is about the cash flow, the yield is about half. So unless your tax bracket is 50%, you'll do better getting the higher rate of return and paying some taxes than you will by getting the lower rate of return and not paying any taxes, because what I keep is still more than what I would have gotten from the municipal. Mm-hmm. And so, but this is understanding math. This is understanding taxes, and also trying to control emotions, because the emotion is, I hate taxes. I'd rather not pay taxes.
Well, they're unavoidable. I tell you what, if you want to give me the $800 million lottery winnings, and I have to pay X amount in taxes, I'll be willing to pay it. That's fine. It's not what I. I'm not looking
forward to that tax. I don't even know if my hand would stop shaking enough to write that check. But I'd let somebody else write it for me.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I think you could afford it. Yeah, you could afford it at that point. That's right.
We're talking about checks, and if anybody younger than 50 is listening, they're saying, "What's a check?"
What's a check? Boy, that's for sure. So the three that we mentioned here, and Rick, did you disagree with any of these as being something across the board that everybody should consider?
Being efficient as possible with taxes, I think, it's just you have to do it, because why do we want to pay money on something that we don't like? And I've never met anybody that enjoys paying taxes. And yes, it does a lot of, taxes are used, especially city and local, whatever, to do, the potholes and all that. But they squander and they waste more money, and it just ticks me off. So I don't like paying taxes. And so I'm going to try to pay as little as legally possible. And that's efficiently possible, not just for 1 year, but for extended number of years.
Yeah, and that's what you got to do. So the first one, don't sell volatile assets to fund your immediate cash flow needs, right? Perfect. Price there is you got to keep portion of your money in some lower return assets. Okay, you willing to do that? That's fine. The second one, use time to your advantage. The price there is just patience. You got to sit through periods where markets are flat, they're down. You have to resist the urge to do something when it feels like nothing's happening.
You got to control your emotions. On both sides. You got to control the greed that you're missing out on return and the fear, that it's emotions are hard to deal with.
Well, and there are people who are not willing to pay that price. So, okay, well, just, understand that you're going to miss out. And the third one is what I said was pay as little in taxes as you're legally required to do. You reworded that well, which was to say be as efficient with your taxes as possible. I think both of those are the same. Just sometimes that means the price there is that you got to make some tax moves, maybe pay some things now that you don't want to, but you could be avoiding paying a whole lot more later on. So
was it Fram oil filters, pay me now or pay me later?
It was one of those. Pennzoil or Fram? I can never remember.
Pay me a little bit now to avoid paying me a lot later.
That's right. Me being, of course, any of your city, state, local, or federal governments. So to wrap this up here, as Rick is going to check what that company was, the hacks, was it Fram?
It was Fram.
Okay, there you go. All right. Pennzoil, that's right. Pennzoil was just the oil. They didn't have filters. Whatever. These three hacks you talked about today, they're not shortcuts. I don't want to call them that. They're truths or truisms, whatever you want to call them. I think they apply almost completely across the board, and that is indeed a rare statement on this podcast. Each one of them comes with a price. As I said before, you got to be willing to pay that price. The question is whether you're choosing the right one or trying to avoid altogether. And end up paying a much higher price later. And that's where a strategy like the bucket strategy fits in. I know we didn't mention it necessarily much, but I think that's a kind of a given here. We're not talking about avoiding the costs. We're talking about structuring things in a way where you're paying the right costs at the right time so that the plan, works the way it's designed to do. If you want to walk through how that might look in your own situation, reach out to the advisors, including Professor Rick Plum at Lucia Capital Group, 800-644-1150, 800-644-1150. You can also visit us online at luciacap.com, LUCIACAP.com. While you're there, check out the guides. We got the guides right there available. Mention this all the time. Bucket Strategy Guide, Social Security, retirement, rollovers, estate planning, maybe another one up there. But those are all designed to help you understand how all these pieces fit together or should fit together. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Do not miss a thing. Got more stuff coming up for you in the coming weeks, helping you manage your financial future. We are out of time. For Professor Rick Plum, Certified Financial Planner Professional, and accredited wealth management advisor, I'm your podcast host, Johnny Dean. Thanks for listening. Managing your financial future. We'll talk to you all again next week. The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. Each taxpayer should seek independent advice from a tax professional based on his or her individual circumstances. The opinions, statements, and forecasts presented herein are general information only and are not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. There's no guarantee that any investment strategy will meet its stated objective. All investments involve risk, including potential loss of principal. Investing in mutual funds involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Fund value will fluctuate with market conditions and it may not achieve its investment objective. Examples cited are hypothetical, are for illustrative purposes only, are not guaranteed and subject to potential federal and state law amendments. There is no guarantee that you will achieve the results discussed or illustrated. Treasury securities are backed by full faith and credit of the U.S. government, but are subject to inflation risk. Municipal bond interest may be subject to the alternative minimum tax. Bonds are subject to market and interest rate risk. If sold prior to maturity, bond values will decline as interest rates rise. Bonds are subject to availability, change in price, call features, and credit risk. CDs are FDIC insured up to $250,000 per depositor per insured bank for each account ownership category. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Rick Plum is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC.